Police, get down on the ground now. Clear right, hands where I can see them.
Potential risk to our community and how widespread the problem is of illegal drug use within the city. This is
"4 o'clock in the morning, Chicago's bitter cold and pitch black darkness. At the same time, 1,600 federal agents make their move 20 locations, 800 targets all hit simultaneously. This is no ordinary street gang. It's the most ruthless paramilitary group from Mexico, which has quietly transformed Chicago into the logistical center of their criminal empire. War rifles smuggled from abroad, fentanyl flooding the Midwest, killing thousands of Americans, all arriving via the same freight trains you see daily.
Operation Steel Flood, the largest cartel raid in the city's history, is about to ignite. The next 3 hours will keep you on the edge of your seat.
Operation Steel Flood, the largest cartel raid in the city's history, is about to ignite. The next 3 hours will keep you on the edge of your seat.
One, execute.
At 4 o'clock in the morning in Chicago, 1,600 federal agents, 20 locations, 800 targets. Watch as they take action. The largest cartel raid in the city's history is about to unfold. 1,600 federal agents have flooded into Chicago for Operation Steel Flood, launching the most dangerous raid the city has ever witnessed to dismantle the fortified stronghold of the organized crime group Lozetta. Chicago, a city built on movement, is about to be shaken to its core. The rail lines, warehouse districts, and constant flow of freight keep the entire Midwest thriving. But beneath the surface of this perpetual motion, federal agents began to notice something taking root, something organized, something menacing. The Lozetta group had infiltrated Chicago in the same way they spread across Mexico, quietly with military precision. They are not a street gang fighting over turf. They are a paramilitary organization made up of former elite soldiers known for their brutality and strict discipline. The FBI has classified them as a national security threat, not just a drug cartel. Their operations in Chicago are intricately tied to the city's logistics network, with heavy weapons flowing through cargo ports before resurfacing in foreign conflict zones. Money is laundered through trucking companies, while drugs, exceptionally pure methamphetamine, heroin, and vast shipments of fentanyl stream through industrial corridors into the Midwest. For months, investigators only uncovered scattered pieces, suspicious containers, encrypted messages, sudden bursts of violence near abandoned lots, but no clear target. Then a confidential informant came forward. A confidential source tipped off about a shipment of military-grade rifles moving through a warehouse on the city's south side. Not handguns, but weapons designed for warfare. When the intel reached ICE's Homeland Security Investigations Division, the mood at the Chicago field office changed instantly. Senior agents recognized the pattern immediately. Military-grade rifles, cartel-level drugs, and secretive warehousing could only mean one thing: the Lozetta group had planted roots far deeper than anyone had anticipated, but ICE couldn't take it on alone. Within days, the case was elevated to a joint interagency task force. The FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force was the first to move in, not because of the drugs, but because Lozetta operated with insurgency-style tactics, a multi-layered command structure, encrypted couriers, and violence designed to terrorize entire neighborhoods. ATF followed, bringing their expertise in tracing weapons that disappeared into international conflicts. The Chicago Police Department's Gang Intelligence Unit contributed vital street-level knowledge, the blocks, the safe houses, the subtle shifts in territory that federal databases never picked up. Over the course of 3 years, the investigation spread like a shadow beneath the city, with surveillance teams rotating through rail yards and transportation hubs. Undercover agents infiltrated repair shops and warehouses believed to be storing Lozetta shipments. Wiretaps intercepted coded phrases like long tools, cold engines, and night packages, which were later decoded as rifles, drug shipments, and cash. ATF ballistics experts confirmed the grim reality. Some of the rifles recovered in foreign conflict zones had originated from purchases made in Illinois, funneled through straw buyers, and ultimately delivered to Lozetta. DEA chemists analyzed drugs seized from routine traffic stops across the state. The purity was undeniable. This was Lozetta-grade meth produced in industrial superlabs. Each discovery pulled the noose tighter. What had started with a single informant had evolved into a comprehensive portrait of a cartel that had established a logistics hub deep within Chicago's maze of warehouses. By late 2024, federal prosecutors agreed the evidence was solid enough to authorize an unprecedented takedown. By the winter of 2024, every agency involved knew exactly what they were facing. Lozetta hadn't simply established a foothold in Chicago, they had created a fully operational hub, fortified warehouses, armed sentries, and a delivery network skilled in counter-surveillance. Federal prosecutors made the decision it was time to act. The operation was codenamed Steel Flood, a nod to the wave of federal agents that would strike just before dawn. In a heavily secured command center on the city's west side, leaders from ICE, FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals, Illinois, State Police, and CPD gathered around a digital map marked with red dots. Each marker indicated a Lozetta-linked site, weapons caches, drug processing labs, stash houses, and 2 warehouses believed to be key command hubs. "800 targets in total, 1,600 officers assigned to the operation, a scale on par with some of the largest federal operations in American history." At 4:42 a.m., the first teams moved out. Armored vehicles sped south on the still empty expressways, helicopters silently hovered above the industrial corridors. Sniper teams took their positions on rooftops near the southern rail yards. Chicago was still dark, cold, and eerily quiet. The kind of quiet that hangs in the air right before everything erupts. The breach began at 4:58 a.m. at Warehouse 17, deep inside the vast Windstorm freight complex. The SWAT stack advanced on the reinforced steel door. Before the breacher could even swing the ram, the first muzzle flash lit up from within. The defenders fired first. The sound shattered the silence of the empty lot. Short, controlled burst, not the erratic spray of street gangs. These were trained shooters. Federal agents dropped to the ground. Snipers on the adjacent rooftop pinpointed 2 gunmen behind stacked pallets. 2 precise shots neutralized the threat. Flashbangs erupted and the steel door crashed inward. Agents flooded in, their voices echoing as they shouted commands. Inside, they found 3 Lozetta members barricaded behind forklifts, still fighting until the overwhelming number of agents pouring into the building forced their surrender. At that very moment across the city, identical scenes were unfolding. At a warehouse near Cicero Avenue, a team cornered an armed security detail attempting to flee in 2 pickup trucks. The vehicles were surrounded by armored units before they could even open fire. At a row house in South Chicago, agents faced a sandbagged strong point, but the suspects immediately surrendered as soon as the breaching charge detonated. By 7:10 a.m., the operation reached its peak. Hundreds were in custody, weapons scattered everywhere. drugs packed in industrial-grade containers, ledgers, money counters, encrypted phones, logistics notebooks, and most critically, irrefutable evidence that Chicago had become the distribution nerve center for the Lozetta network. The city had just witnessed the largest cartel takedown in its history. As the dust settled from the early morning raids, federal agents moved into Phase 2 of Operation Steel Flood, turning chaos into evidence. Every warehouse, every container, every phone, every spent round was now a vital piece of the vast criminal map prosecutors had spent years trying to assemble. Inside Warehouse 17, the site of the first shots fired, agents worked with precision. The air still smelled of gunpowder, and shell casings were neatly marked with small yellow triangles. The bullet-riddled forklift was sealed off as evidence. Beneath a false wall of pallets, investigators discovered a cache of military-wrapped rifles, each with its serial number professionally scrubbed away. ATF ballistics experts immediately recognized the rifle pattern, the same make, previously traced to foreign conflict zones. This was the first direct evidence that Chicago wasn't just a distribution hub. It was a weapons pipeline. At another southern target, agents uncovered a fortified room that resembled a forward operating base more than a gang hideout. Freight route maps were pinned to corkboards, colored strings, linking Texas ports to Illinois rail hubs. Encrypted tablets were scattered across a steel table still logged into a messaging channel, displaying the Lozetta emblem. The room didn't feel like a criminal den. It felt like an outpost. Can you even imagine it right beneath the freight trains you see rumbling through Chicago every single day? Tons of fentanyl and war-grade rifles were quietly flowing into the Midwest, and nobody had a clue. Meanwhile, at a house on Ashland Avenue, a secondary standoff erupted. The U.S. Marshals team breached a two-story residence suspected of being a cash and drug stash house. As they entered, a mid-level Lozetta commander attempted to flee down the back stairs, firing recklessly down the hallway. A deputy marshal responded with 2 controlled shots, wounding him in the leg. The rest of the suspects surrendered immediately. On the second floor, agents discovered steel drums packed with rubber-banded cash and spiral notebooks, their pages torn open, revealing detailed records of payouts, bribes, and shipping schedules. Each piece unraveled the full scope of the organization, a 3-tier military-style hierarchy. Weapons handlers, logistics teams embedded within trucking companies, a financial division laundering money through commodity brokers, and a Chicago plaza boss who reported directly to Mexico. Federal prosecutors spent hours piecing together every detail. ATF matched dozens of rifles to overseas seizures. DEA confirmed that the meth seized in Chicago originated from a single network of super labs across the border. FBI analysts decrypted conversations that outlined plans to expand distribution from Illinois into Michigan, Wisconsin, and parts of Ohio. By the end of the weekend, the evidence filled an entire federal warehouse. The charges were overwhelming conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, international weapons trafficking money, laundering violent crimes in aid of racketeering, and providing material support to a criminal enterprise. Some defendants faced mandatory minimums. Others, especially those linked to the weapons pipeline, were facing life sentences. What started as scattered fragments of intelligence had transformed into an ironclad case strong enough to dismantle a paramilitary cartel operating in the heart of one of America's largest cities. Chicago had witnessed the battle. Now the city would watch the aftermath unfold. In the hours following Operation Steel Flood, Chicago fell into an eerie silence. The kind that settles over a city after a storm nobody knew was raging until it finally passed. Police radios crackled continuously. Federal convoys moved through the industrial corridors. Helicopters traced slow circles over the southern sky. But for the first time in years, every movement was controlled, methodical, no longer driven by Lozetta. However, the operation was far from finished. Inside the command center, agents tracked heat signatures and drone footage from the remaining target zones. Not every Lozetta member had been captured in the initial wave. Some had vanished into alleys and abandoned lots the moment the first door was breached. Others were already trying to regroup, sticking to the same playbook they had used in Mexico. They sought high-ground rooftops, vantage points anywhere they could counterattack or escape. One such standoff erupted near the old grain silos along the Calumet River. An ICE ATF quick reaction team spotted movement on the upper floors of the abandoned plant. Thermal imaging revealed two armed suspects holed up behind rusted machinery. As the team advanced, the suspects opened fire from above rounds, sparking off steel beams. Agents took cover behind the concrete silos and returned steady fire. The gunfight lasted less than 40 seconds but was intense, a stark reminder that Lozetta didn't surrender easily. Once the suspects were neutralized, the final sweep began. Federal agents spent the next 48 hours cataloging what remained hidden basement labs, vacuum-sealed fentanyl bricks stamped with Lozetta markings lockers, full of rifle parts and tactical gear ledgers, listing payoffs to drivers across 5 states. Chicago's leadership held a joint press conference at City Hall. Standing shoulder to shoulder, federal, state, and local officials, they made it clear that this wasn't just a victory. It was a warning. Lozetta had attempted to establish a military-style stronghold in America's largest logistics hub and had come dangerously close to succeeding. In the hardest-hit neighborhoods, residents emerged from their homes watching as convoys disappeared down streets that had once been ruled by fear. For years, many had lived with the constant presence of unmarked vans at midnight, coded handoffs near the loading docks, and the quiet understanding that certain blocks no longer truly belonged to the city. Now, for the first time, there was a cautious sense that control was being slowly reclaimed. But there were no celebrations because Chicago, like the federal commanders, knew the truth. The removal of hundreds of Lozetta members had created a power vacuum. And power vacuums draw in new predators. Smaller crews could rise to take their place, and other international cartels might move in to seize the lost territory. Federal agencies committed to a long-term presence sustained intelligence teams and patrol units supporting the CPD. Community groups, too, began to take action, stepping up to help rebuild the neighborhoods once under the cartel's thumb. Youth programs, re-entry support, and real jobs efforts to keep vulnerable kids from becoming the next recruits for the cartel. In the end, Operation Steel Flood didn't just dismantle a criminal network, it revealed how close Chicago had come to becoming a permanent hub in an international paramilitary empire. The battle was fought. The city endured. What happens next will determine whether this victory lasts. In the end, Operation Steel Flood wasn't just a raid, it was a lesson. A stark reminder that even in America's largest, fastest-moving city, danger can grow silently in the shadows of the very systems we all rely on. Operation Steel Flood was one of the most remarkable interagency collaborations in recent American history. More than 1,600 agents from HSI, FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals, Illinois State Police, and CPD raided 20 locations, simultaneously arresting hundreds of key figures and seizing tons of fentanyl and military-grade weapons. The operation revealed the alarming depth of paramilitary cartel infiltration into the nation's logistics hub. The streets are safer and the message is clear, but a power vacuum remains. Victory can only be sustained through community support youth programs and long-term cooperation between federal and local authorities. Chicago won the big battle, Now it must win the peace. The lesson from Chicago. The greatest danger isn't gunfire in the streets. It's the silence as a cartel quietly hijacks the very rails, highways, and warehouses the entire country relies on to build a criminal empire. They don't need open warfare to take control of neighborhoods. A few unnoticed containers are all it takes. Every time you see a freight train rolling or a convoy of trucks moving in perfect rhythm, remember in the shadows of that flow, predators are always watching. Only through the vigilance of every citizen and the seamless coordination between agencies can we prevent the next steel flood. This isn't just the job of the police, it's the responsibility of all of us. Operation Steel Flood is over hundreds of Mexican paramilitary gunmen in custody, tons of fentanyl, and war-grade rifles seized. But Chicago is holding its breath, aware of the power vacuum left behind. When one monster falls, others are already circling to take its place. Is this the final victory or just the calm before the next storm? What do you think? Drop Steel Flood in the comments if you believe the city has been changed forever, or vacuum if you think another cartel will move in soon. Your comment decides whether this video reaches millions more. Thank you for watching until the very end.